Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Miller. Now, in today's program, we have two issues. We are going to be looking at that shocking situation that took place on the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. A young woman held captive, tortured, we're told, for 3 days. What went wrong? How could this have happened on a hall on campus? What are the cultural norms surrounding intimate partner violence and domestic violence that could allow this to happen? So we'll be talking about that. But first, a developing story following the Integrity Commission's report in relation to an investigation that involved Prime Minister Andrew Holness and concluded with a recommendation that the matter be referred to the Director of Prosecutions. Now, we know it's a pretty involved issue. So joining me in studio, I have producer and TV anchor Giovanni Dennis, who is going to help me. What we want to do is start by going through the report for you, helping you to understand the sequence of events, what the Integrity Commission has set out in this report. We'll be hearing the response from the Prime Minister. He sent out a statement a short while ago. The leader of the opposition has made a preliminary statement as well, a preliminary comment on this, and also we'll get a couple of comments from commentators in terms of the significance of this and what needs to happen now. And Giovanni, let me just kick us off here, because just to give our viewers an indication of exactly what happened, the Integrity Commission said this is in relation to allegations that contracts were awarded to an entity called Weston Construction, and that there is a connection or relationship between the owners of that company and Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who was at the time of the circumstances outlined in this report, the Minister of Education, Youth and Information.
Now, the report goes on to say that the investigation sought to ascertain, among other things, the nature and particulars of GOJ contracts that were awarded to Westcon Construction Limited during the relevant period. B, the nature and extent of the relationship between Andrew Holness and the directors of Westcon Construction Limited. C, the extent of the involvement, if any, of Andrew Holness in the award of Government of Jamaica contracts to Westcon Construction Limited. D, whether the circumstances surrounding the award of contracts and or the processes utilized by 1, the Ministry of Education and Youth, 2, the National Works Agency, 3, the Social Development Commission was devoid of irregularity and impropriety and was fair and transparent.
Now, we just want to take you through a couple of the key findings. So, one is that in all, 10 contracts were awarded by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information to Western Construction during the relevant period.
Now, of the 10 contracts, only 5 were reported to the Office of the Contractor General by way of the Ministry of Education's quarterly contract award reports for the period.
The direct contracting procurement methodology was used in one case. It was disclosed by the Ministry of Education that they use a criteria for, quote, lowest responsive tender in the other 9 contracts.
Now, the 10 contracts awarded by the Ministry of Education were between the contract values of $1.4 million and $3.36 million and had a cumulative value of $21.8 million.
Now, the report also gives some particulars in terms of the company itself, Western Construction, that it was registered by the Company's Office of Jamaica. A director shareholder was Robert Garvin. Donovan Simpson was a director shareholder. Jerome Green was the secretary of the company. And then they went into some detail in terms of the nature of the relationship between Mr. Holness as well as the directors and the principals of Western Construction, and they point out that Mr. Garvin and Mr. Simpson, both directors and shareholders, have been known to Mr. Holness for over 20 years.
Now, based on the disclosure which was made by Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Mr. Robert Garvin is personally known to him and had been employed both in the Prime Minister's West Central constituency and his personal business. It was also disclosed by the Prime Minister that Mr. Donovan Simpson is known to him casually and was introduced to him by Mr. Garvin, and that Mr. Simpson was engaged by him privately to undertake land surveying work.
All right, now then the report goes into a series of facts in relation to information gleaned from the Companies Office of Jamaica. We're not going to go into all of that, but suffice it to say it includes statements that, for instance, Mr. Holness is a director of the company called Positive Jamaica Foundation. Other directors were included Robert Garvin, Mark Azan, Kadisha Campbell, Kent Gammon, Warren Vernon, and Robert Garvin, I beg your pardon, noted as a ceased director. And the report goes through that kind of information for a number of companies to illustrate the kind of connectedness between the shareholders of Weston as well as Mr. Holness. So we're going to take you now directly to the part of the report where they speak of the extent of what they call the extent of Mr. Holness's involvement in the award of government contracts to Weston. They say Weston was recommended by way of a letter dated December 20, 2007, written by Mr. Holness for the award of a contract in the amount of 1.4 million for works in the West Central St. Andrew constituency related to the 2007 Christmas work program.
Now, in relation to the contract which was awarded by the SDC to Westcon Construction Limited in the amount of $375,000, Mr. Holness wrote to the SDC by way of letter dated September 23, 2009 and advised that Mr. Robert Garvin was employed as the project manager under the Constituency Development Fund in West Central St. Andrew. Subsequent invoices were provided to the SDC requiring that payment be made to Mr. Garvin, care of Westcon Construction Limited.
All right, now in terms of the recommendations, and this is what, of course, has grabbed the headlines. The report says, in relation to the Ministry of Education's failure to report to the Office of the Contractor General 5 contracts awarded to Westcon, and which have been mentioned, the Director of Investigation has referred this report to the Director of Corruption Prosecution for such actions as the Director may deem appropriate.
Now, having regard to the provisions of Section 29 of the then applicable Contractor General Act and the NWA's failure to report to the OCG 20 contracts which were awarded to Westcon Construction Limited and which have been mentioned herein, the Director of Investigation refers a copy of this investigation report to the Director of Corruption Prosecution for such actions as the Director may deem to be appropriate.
And in respect of representations made by the Social Development Commission in its reports in relation to the procurement methodology used to award contracts to Westcon, the Director of Investigation is referring the report to Director of Corruption for such actions as the Director may deem appropriate.
Now, the matter concerning the potential conflict of interest which arose in relation to the recommendation which was made by the Most Honorable Andrew Holness is being referred to the Director of Corruption Prosecution for consideration with respect to breaches of the Contractor General Act, the Public Sector Procurement Regulations 2008, the Corruption Prevention Act, and or any other applicable law.
And the report has also been referred to the Speaker of the House of Representatives for action as the Speaker deems appropriate. Now, the Leader of the Opposition earlier today gave a comment on this particular issue. Let's take the first clip.
People's National Party is appalled by the unprecedented news that the head of government of Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, has been referred to the Director of Corruption Prosecutions for possible charges after a multi-million-dollar corruption investigation. This referral by the Integrity Commission is based on their investigation and report to Parliament implicating Prime Minister Holness in allegations of conflicts of interest regarding tens of millions of dollars of contracts awarded to close associates of his from as far back as 2009 when he was Minister of Education. This revelation exposes our country to international embarrassment. A head of government should be beyond reproach, and it is unacceptable that he has been besmirched by accusations of this kind of impropriety.
Now, he also spoke to me earlier this evening on Radio Jamaica's Beyond the Headlines, where he went a little bit further in his comment.
This is a very serious matter for Jamaica and as a country that, in the international community, for our Prime Minister to have this kind of cloud now hanging over him is unprecedented and we believe untenable.
When you say untenable, what does that mean?
Well, I think the Prime Minister needs to consider very carefully his position, and I will speak more to this tomorrow.
Now, the Prime Minister issued a statement, in fact, that came in during primetime news, Giovanni.
Yes, and we'll take this just after we take this break right now and share with our viewers what the Prime Minister said in relation to the findings of this report.